Alright, so Merry Christmas goes on. Where I figure in 35 years in battle with the stigma of mental illness that at a maximum minimum, I have earned my right to my mental illness humor. Where I find the worst part of my mental illness is the stigma, as I'm so sick up and fed with it that I labeled shrinks label givers and labeled stigma mental illness and mental illness ignorance and mental illness. Where I just may be the wrong mental illness to give stigma to. As I may give you an 04010 hoop loop, toucan, fruit loops, hoop, hula hoop, single one thoughters can't, sorry. As I remember being told that it's okay to get angry, and I said no it wasn't, as my body is not big enough for my rage, but as they insisted it was okay, I shot in the face. And they began their race for the phone. And I sat down and smiled and said, see, I told you so. As if I express my anger and rage, first thing they do is remind me that I have a label. Besides, Pancho Loco's Crazy Thunderheart Smoking Shield Medicine Man, my first real Native American guide, taught me that it was a misuse of the gift of such powers. And I discovered the best part of knowing I'm crazy is not having to worry about going crazy. I'd shut shrinks and their medicinal regimes out of our life in 81, but the label never went away. And I had once predicted that one day this country would use my label against me, and now say that you can thank my first legal marriage exit for having made that prediction simply come true. With her using my label against me and filing for divorce, gaining immediate temporary custody of her 2 children. Where I felt like that female judge was more interested in some shrink's opinions of my life that I didn't even know. So I surrendered my pride and put my life in God's care in 93 to file for Social Security, because I wasn't going to pay for some shrink's opinion of my life because that wife married the wrong peaceful freedom rebel nature for her male domination matriarchy dreams, That when I found out what my kids were going to get, made the financial decision for me to say, fine, my brain is broken. Now, I really do thank all taxpayers for the less than a penny I do get from you each year, for our broken brain disability, inability to become equality-wise, free conformity acceptance to someone else's conformity acceptance, fear of being cast out of their free society reality travesty. And I'm still asking, why should I mind being cast out of a travesty? As I was told that Social Security was going to send me to vocational rehabilitation, but I honestly didn't wait for my orders, putting in my own order or asking for an appointment. With them, I met Jack Black, who asked me, what kind of a job are you looking for? And I expressed I'd really like a job where I can think. And he asked me if I realized that you don't get paid for that. And then, quite dumbfounded, I pondered for just a moment and said, well, gee, that sure would explain a lot of the problems in this country. So what kind of programs do you have to offer? And he says, well, I'm sorry, but at this time we don't have any funding for any kind of programs. I'm like, oh, wow, really? You mean they can afford to pay you, to tell me that you can't help me? As far as I'm concerned, my Social Security don't pay much, but at least I can thank. Back then they were complaining about the decay of moral standards in society, and my mother had taught me that it was wrong to sell a gift, and my abilities are gifts from God, so it is wrong to work for money. That is an illusion anyway. If you wanted to grow up and face reality in our Sioux happy nation, I turned into my private lawsuit against the government for using my label against me, and I won without a lawyer, and I got my tax dollars back because I ain't paying for it. Where our emotions are affecting our thoughts and our thoughts are affecting our emotions, it can be a whole lot of fun on a good day. But in view of a realm of opposites, it can become overwhelmingly depressing on an equally opposite bad day. As in view of our realm of opposites, we believe that it is all of those differences between those opposites that is making them the whole of what they both are. That it is less that you actually know of the opposite of something that you may have claimed to know is to have said the less that you actually knew of what you have claimed to have known. Now I'm not claiming that you claim to know anything, and this doesn't mean that I'm claiming you don't know anything. It's with our emotions affecting our thoughts affecting our emotions, we felt that we should think it was more important how we think. Compared to just thinking, is how we think will be affecting our emotions. So that in learning how to think in our best ways that we can find to think for our best thoughts affecting our emotions, as to why we felt that we should think that how we say what we say is more important than just saying it. It's what we said had been affected by how we felt and thought, as to why I felt that I should think that what I say about how I write what I write is more important than just writing what I write, as what I have written will be affecting how I read what I have written, that how I read what I have written is more important than just reading it, as if I was doing it. It's something I felt like I had to do and don't even want to do it, believing that the listener would find a greater enjoyment hearing me read it with the expressions of interest and enjoyment. And then I had to have a real good laugh one day, proofreading a day's writing, working a work effort, where those had once been thoughts within our mind that, we were technically, indirectly reading ourselves out of our mind, that even how we are out of our mind is more important than just being out of our mind, as to how human being common folk joke lore more often go, oh wow, hey, look at that guy over there, now he is really out of his mind now, isn't he? Well, we hope that you don't mind reading me out of my mind, or listening to me read me out of my mind in this case, and knowing that I'm not expecting you to think I'm funny if I'm not. Having grown up with 5 sisters, I say that arguing with me is like arguing with a female. At least you men should have a sense of the senselessness that you can find in a situation such as that. And I dare say, women, beware. I could argue at the speed of 5 very stubborn individuals, all with above normal intellect things, PMSing during the full moons, where I learned to howl at the moon at an early age, where a female once told me PMS stood for putting up with men's crap. You know what I mean? Yeah, I had to beg to differ, as I believe that is the time of the month where no woman puts up with any man's, you know what I mean? As my father taught me that discussions easily turn into disagreements, and then easily turn into heated debates. That can easily turn into anger, rage, reality arguments. And if it's going to turn into a fight to the death, ask yourself this: what will your death mean in 1,000 years from now? As in most cases, you'd be arguing over the differences of opinions that were here long before we were born, will likely last long after we're gone, where it takes the bigger man to walk away, knowing when to respect their right to their opinion and having the wisdom to agree to disagree, and live to fight another day. As in some cases, it's just easier to win the argument and let them think they're right. Because we could blow up the planet and let God sort it out. Oh, say, can you see by the sun's shining light that the differences of opinions will survive? So y'all have Merry Christmas, and, maybe peace one day for the world, Merry Christmas.